Good evening, everyone. I'm Ankit and you're watching the Indian Express analysis on StudyIQ IS English channel. Today is 17th of February and 4 p.m. We go live every day now. So this is our today's discussion. Now, if you can see from the screens behind me, we'll be covering 6 important articles that have appeared in the newspaper, and we will be starting our today's discussion with a scheme that was announced by Madam Finance Minister in her budget speech that was known as PM Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana. Now, this scheme, it actually intends to increase the agricultural productivity in India, and also it belongs to agricultural sector. So it is important from which syllabus? GS paper 3 syllabus, and it is a part of economy. Understood? So this is our first article of the day. Then we'll be dealing with the new income tax bill, which was already highlighted in a budget speech by Madam Finance Minister, and subsequently on the Valentine's Day, the government brought this new income tax bill. Now, the purpose of this new income tax bill was to overhaul the process of income taxation in the country, as earlier there was this act, Income Tax Act of 1961, through which income tax was levied on citizens of India. However, as you can understand, this was a very old law which was passed in 1961, and that is why it was subjected to certain amendments from that time. Now, because of many amendments since 1961 till now, this law has become quite complex and difficult to understand. And also, as the laws become complex, there is a subjective interpretation which leads to frequent disputes and court cases. So what the government wants is that it wants to reduce the dispute, and it wants to make the process and procedure of levying of income tax much more simpler and efficient. That is why this new bill was enacted or introduced in the Indian Parliament. Hence, it is also important from GS paper 3 syllabus, as economy, particularly the first line of GS paper 3 syllabus, it deals or it mentions mobilization of resources. And you understand, taxation is the most important source of resource, particularly financial resource for any government, be it Indian government or any government for that matter. So we'll be dealing with new income tax bill, and we'll understand what are the important highlights of this bill and what kind of changes it wants to make. Then we'll be dealing with neutrinos. This article particularly appeared in the newspaper few days back, but we left out. However, I felt that this was an important article, and hence I will be covering it today. Now, this neutrino is a kind of matter, and we'll understand its properties and why tracking or understanding the movement of neutrinos, it is important for scientists in general. This is a part of GS paper 3 syllabus, particularly with relation to science and technology, and questions on such matters have been frequently asked in the UPSC, preferably in the prelims examination. So we'll also be solving a practice question on this particular topic. Then we'll be understanding India-US Compact Initiative, which is an initiative primarily to increase the technological and defense related cooperation between India and US. Now, this initiative was announced after PM Modi went to US and met with US President Donald Trump, and as a result, slew of agreements were signed, which we covered on Saturday. However, this compact initiative was left out, so we are going to cover it today. Then we'll be dealing with the evolution of India's middle class population. As we understand, India's middle class of population, which is quite significant for the potential of India's economic growth, it has evolved in recent times. Earlier, primarily India's middle class, they emerged out of government services, but now for the past 30 years or so, since after India got liberalized, we have seen that India's middle class have emerged from private sector, particularly IT as well as banking sector. So we'll try to understand how India's middle class has evolved, and however, there are many challenges that the middle class even faces currently. So we'll even try to understand this in our today's discussion. This particularly is important from many perspectives. It is important from GS paper 1, as it deals with changes in Indian society, and also with matters related to GS 3, as it deals with matters related to employment. So that is why such kind of an article which intermixes two kind of subjects, society and economy, they are very important for our exams. As we have seen, particularly in mains examination, there are questions that have been made particularly by linking two different subjects. Then towards the end, we'll be dealing with the matter of judicial pendency, as there is an op-ed in today's Indian Express newspaper, and it highlights that number of cases which is pending in Indian courts, be it Supreme Court, High Courts as well as District Court, they have gone beyond the number of 4.5 crore, which is a huge number. Now, to deliver justice and to ensure that people actually have justice, we need courts to function efficiently and effectively. On the other hand, when there is a judicial pendency, it highlights that our judicial system is not working as originally envisaged by the Constitution as well as people of India. So we'll try to understand this problem in detail before solving a mains related question on this topic. Yes, on your popular demand, I've introduced mains related question in this session. Now, good evening, Sejal. Good evening, Augustine, Baga Springs. Good evening, Kusum, Yashi, Rishabh, Biswabrat, as well as Divyansh. All of you, good evening. Biswabrat, I'm doing well. How are you doing? I hope everyone is good. So are you, Kusum? How are you? I'm good, Kusum. Now, let us, before beginning today's session, you know that the notes for this session will be available on my Telegram channel called as ATS Live. So you can search the words ATS Live on the top right hand corner of your app, and also you have an option to scan the QR code which will take you directly to my channel. Now, not just going directly to my channel will do the trick. You have to subscribe it and also download the notes which I uploaded so as to revise the concept that I tell you every day in these sessions. Also, I'm in a process of uploading important reels on my Instagram. My handle is called as ANKTSNGH, so please go on my handle, as you will be getting important reels which are not just informative but can also be useful for your prelims examination, right? So let us start our today's discussion, but before that, let us solve the question that I gave you before the end of the session on Saturday. Consider the following, and we have to understand how many of the above are most likely consequences of imposition of reciprocal tariffs by United States. Now, what happens after any country imposes reciprocal tariff on our exports to that country? Our exports become costly, and that is why it is expected that the amount of exports that will be done from India to that country, it will reduce. Now, there are many consequences also. First of all, India highlighted that in order to balance its trade with US, it will try to import more from US market, particularly oil and gas. So that is why increase in oil and gas imports from US is a likely consequence, as it has been highlighted in the statement when PM Modi met with US President Donald Trump. Strengthening of Indian rupee. Now, what happens in case our export reduces? So we'll be getting less amount of dollar for our rupee. That means the supply of dollars in Indian market will reduce. Thereby, it will also reduce the amount of Indian rupee or the value of Indian rupee, because the supply of dollar will not be balanced by rupee. Therefore, the supply of rupee will increase as compared to dollar, hence reducing its overall value. So it will lead to weakening, not strengthening of Indian rupee, right? That is why first statement or second statement becomes incorrect. Now, will it lead to boost to Atmanirbhar Bharat? Again incorrect, as it will not lead to boost of Atmanirbhar Bharat, rather it will set back India's Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. What is Atmanirbhar Bharat? We want to manufacture more products which we can sell in domestic as well as export to foreign markets, right? But when our exports are not getting fair treatment in countries like US, as the cost because of the tariffs has increased, it will reduce the amount of exports that India does to foreign countries. That is why it will reduce the amount of manufacturing that will be done in India. Hence, it is not a boost, rather a setback to Atmanirbhar Bharat. So only first is correct. We have to identify how many of the above is most likely consequences. Therefore, option A here is the right answer. Yes, Baga Springs, only one is right. Kusum Banerjee, just not used to your new schedule. Even I am not used to this schedule. This is a very big change for me. I earlier used to wake up early in the morning. Today I also wake up early in the morning, but courtesy not the timetable, but Delhi's earthquake. Now, this will be the question that I will be dealing with today before the end of the session. It deals with the issue of judicial pendency, and we have to critically analyze the causes of judicial backlog and suggest comprehensive reform to increase the efficiency of judicial system. If you want to know how to write such answer, please stay tuned to this session. I will be covering this particular answer today. But before that, let us move with our first article of the day. This appeared in the explain section of the Indian Express newspaper on page 12, and and it highlighted that Prime Minister Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana scheme has been introduced, and this article beautifully explains the need of such scheme and also the aims or objective of such scheme. Now, the context of this article is actually in her budget speech, Union Finance Minister Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, she announced many schemes for the India's agricultural sector. The most transformative of this was Pradhan Mantri or Prime Minister Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana, abbreviated as PMDKY. Now, this scheme actually was inspired by an earlier scheme by the Government of India known as Aspirational District Scheme. Now, in Aspirational District Scheme, which was introduced in 112 most backward districts in our country, here government understood that this district are actually quite backward because of lack of health, educational, agricultural and employment related initiatives. So as to make these districts better and more developed, what the government did was that it tried to converge all the schemes so that the benefits that the government extends in all its schemes, they were converged into the district, and the focus was primarily on 112 most backward districts of the country. And this program led to development of these backward related districts, hence it is a success story of the government. So government is trying to replicate this aspirational district scheme also in the agricultural sector by targeting 100 backward districts which face low agricultural productivity, as the overall yields of the crop in these districts are lower than average Indian yields. And also these districts have moderate crop intensity. What is crop intensity? It is the intensity with which a crop is grown in a particular piece of land. So for example, when India got independent, India's cropping intensity was 112%. And now currently, on an average in India, it is 155%. This means a particular piece of agricultural land, it has been used more than 1.5 times every year to grow a crop. Understood? And this is over an agricultural year. Also, these districts have below average credit access. Now, you understand farmers need credit support so as to encourage technological development, buy inputs from the market, and hence these kind of agricultural inputs and credit access are very necessary if we want to increase the productivity of agriculture. But these are not available to the farmers currently into the 100 most backward or agriculturally backward districts, and these 100 districts will be the focus under this particular scheme. Now, with this scheme, what the government wants to do is naturally it wants to increase the agricultural productivity, promote crop diversification so as that farmers who are reliant more on traditional crops like rice and wheat, which particularly are not very remunerable, the farmers should move to other crops like pulses, oilseeds, etc., which will give them much more profit in their farming activities. Also, we need to reduce the dependence of farmers on input so that they do not misuse inputs like seeds, fertilizers, etc. And also the cost of inputs which are currently quite high, we need to reduce them. So that is why this scheme will also promote sustainable agricultural practices, that farmers can grow more crops by using less amount of inputs or making inputs more efficient. Understood? So this is the objective and the aim of this scheme. Now, to achieve these objectives, the government has introduced many measures under this scheme. First of all, post-harvest storage improvements will be done, like construction of cold storages and also storages to keep cereals, etc., as it will enable the farmers to store their crops and sell whenever the prices of these crops are higher in the market. But what if there is no storage? The farmers will have to no other option but to sell them then itself, and regardless of the fact, even if the prices of the crops are less, the farmers, when they are forced to sell it, they will be getting less amount of money. But when you construct storage infrastructure, farmers can store it and sell it according to whenever they find the best rates in the market. Also, as I told you, you need agricultural and input support in order to increase the productivity levels of the agriculture, and for that irrigation facilities will be provided. As we understand, 55% of total agricultural area in our country, they are rain fed. That is, agricultural services are not available there, or irrigation services are not available, and the farmers have no other option to secure water but from the rainfall, and it makes them vulnerable. So what we can do is provide them with irrigation facility through groundwater irrigation, river water irrigation, etc., and it will lead to better access for water resources, and automatically it will lead to higher agricultural productivity. Also, credit availability is a big source of problem, particularly for small and medium farmers, as currently we have seen these farmers, they have no option to go to a financial institution like banks and NBFCs. So for their credit related needs, they are dependent on informal lenders in the village itself, and these lenders, they make profit by charging higher interest rates to the small farmers. So this makes farmers vulnerable to debt, and that is why we need to provide credit availability for their short term needs or immediate needs, and even for their long term loans, so that they can undertake technological development of their agricultural activity. Now the benefits of this scheme, it is expected that it will be available to about 1.7 crore farmers. However, it is important to note that there is no separate budgetary support which has been extended under the scheme. Rather, the benefits of this scheme will be provided by converging the existing agricultural schemes of the government. So the convergence of existing scheme is there and no separate allocation will be made. Understood the important provisions of the scheme? Now, let us move to another article. This article appeared in the editorial section of the Indian Express newspaper on page 8. So, these 100 districts are across Bharat. Yes, actually across Bharat. But the criteria of identifying these 100 districts, that they are backward or agriculturally backward, that their productivity is less, the cropping intensity is less, and also the availability of credit to farmers in these districts are less. So, by that we are identifying the districts. Baga swings, that means PM Kisan is converged, sir. Yes, accordingly. Because the farmers will be identified, especially those farmers who are eligible but they are not getting benefits. So such benefits will be provided to farmers in these districts with a special focus, so that their overall agricultural productivity increases. I hope you understand this. Now let us move to next article. This article appeared in the editorial section of the Indian Express newspaper, and it enumerates the many benefits of new income tax bill which was introduced recently. Now, present budget, it in the field of income tax made many popular announcements, one of which was making income tax exempted to the people who are earning at least 12 lakh rupees. So people earning up to 12 lakh rupees, they'll be exempted from paying income tax in India. But this was not the most transformative announcement made in this year's budget. But rather the most transformative announcement was that the finance ministry, sorry, let me set the mic. Yes. Am I audible? Yes. Now, the most transformative announcement in this year's budget was that finance ministry will announce the new income tax bill. Now, this new income tax bill, it is more substantive and it was introduced in the ongoing budget session in the parliament on 14th of February, that was Valentine's Day. Understood? Now, this new income tax bill, it will introduce an altogether a new bill for the income tax, that is known as Income Tax Bill 2025, and it aims to replace the existing law under which the income tax are levied, that is Income Tax Act of the year 1961. So it wants to replace and not amend the existing law. Understood? Now, the purpose of introducing this bill is first of all to simplify tax laws in India, make compliance to the tax laws easier, and also streamline the tax regime. By streamlining the tax regime, what I mean is that the exemptions that were provided, so that it made the tax laws more complex, they will be simplified by reducing the amount of exemption and making it easier for people to understand what kind of tax they are expected to pay based on their income. Now, it eliminates the outdated provisions and also introduces a clear language, in addition to making some of the amendments that we will cover on in this article only. Now, the overall tax structure, although it remained unchanged, the new bill is a step towards making this entire legislation more efficient and also to enable people easily navigate with the provision with need of cross-referencing. As you can understand, when the existing law was there, it was amended several times since the time it was introduced in 1961. So whenever there is a significant amendment made to any bill, there are a lot of cross references, that section 1 will have a reference in section 35, and similarly section 35 will have a cross reference in, say, section 29. So that is why we need to go back and forth in order to understand the complete provision in any bill which was amended several times. So that is why there was a need to introduce a new bill altogether. Understood? Now, the key features that were introduced in this bill was that introduction of a tax year concept. Now, currently the taxations, they are made on the assessed year. For example, the current fiscal year is called as 2024 and 25, right? So the people who will be paying taxes for their earning in 2024 and 25 will be called as taxation in the assessment year 2025-26. So understood the complexity that you are referring to your earnings in a previous financial year based on the assessment year of the next year, right? So this reduces this concept of assessment year and introduces a new concept of tax year concept. So taxation for your earning in this year will be called as tax year 2024-25. And also it simplifies the crisp language and it introduces a more simplified language in the overall bill itself, that it reduces provisions, cross-referencing and complex explanation, making tax laws much more easier to understand for common people like you and I, and even for professionals like chartered accountants and finance people, right? And it also reduces the length of overall tax bill from 823 pages to 622 pages. Need not remember the number of pages, you need not remember the number of pages, you can just highlight that it reduces the overall length of the tax bill. And the number of clauses, they have also increased so as to make these clauses more comprehensive, that you need not cross reference with another clause, rather every explanation will be provided in that simple or a same clause itself. Understood? So that is, it makes the changes much more comprehensive by reducing the length, increasing the explanation there itself, so that you need not cross reference with another page. Understood? Sir, sorry, did not understand tax year. I told you, right? Currently, if you are earning any amount of money in say 2024 and 25, so the taxation for this income that you will going to file as in your IT returns will be called as assessment year 2025-26, and it leads to all sorts of confusion because your earning is in the previous year, you are filing the tax return in the next year. But this assessment year concept will be changed and the new tax year concept will be introduced, that for your earnings in 2024-25 will be taxed in the same year itself, as it will be called, or the both of them will have a same kind of numerology. Understood? Good evening Ishrar, good evening Rajpal, good evening Ashil. Yes, as I was saying, this makes the more taxation concept much more simplified, and the new bill has a much more crisp language, which makes it easier for people, even for experts and common people, easier to understand the provisions of the bill, right? And the another changes that were made in the bill is that the definition of income has now been expanded. Earlier I told you how can you earn money through salaries, through selling of your capital like land, flats, etc., right? But it also introduces now virtual digital assets like cryptocurrencies, non-fungible tokens. Now these are all made a part of your capital assets. Earlier it was introduced separately. So you understand, the now new bill introduces even the virtual properties like cryptocurrencies, NFTs unto the definition of the capital, and hence any selling of these virtual digital assets will also incur capital gains tax. Now it also removes many redundant provisions that were made earlier. Now many provisions that were introduced say 30-40 years ago have no relevance right now. So this bill removes these redundant provisions, and also that it improves the clarity in many tax provisions. For example, many deductions that are made in your taxes like TDS, taxation rates, assessment of the time limits, these are now consolidated into a very easy to read tables, and any penalties that will be levied on you, they will be quite lower in number. In case if you have made mistakes in your IT return, if you want to amend it, the amount of penalties that will be levied on you will be much lower. And also in case of any future disputes related to tax claims, the tax tribunal, it will resolve the disputes quite quickly. So it makes the entire process of taxation easy, and even in the case you have disputes related to your taxes, it makes the entire dispute resolution process quite quicker. Hence the disputes are expected to solve quickly now. Also the deductions that are made in your salaries like standard deduction, gratuity, leave encashment are now compiled in one section itself. Therefore the overall clarity that the people who are filing the income taxes will be better. Hence it will lead to lesser amount of disputes now. Understood the key features in the bill? Now let us solve the practice question with reference to new income tax bill. Consider the following statement. The bill proposes to amend the existing Income Tax Act with a simplified taxation structure. What did I tell you? Does it seek to amend the existing act? No, it tries to repeal the existing act and introduce a new law altogether. Understood? So, first statement becomes incorrect. It introduces a tax year concept, aligning it with the financial year and eliminates the term assessment year. What did I tell you? This is a correct statement. The third statement, the bill, it seeks to introduce a new dispute resolution mechanism to reduce tax litigation and make this dispute resolution much more quicker in nature. Understood? So that is why third statement right, second right, first incorrect. We had to identify correct statement. Option B here becomes the right answer to this question. Moving to next article, this appeared on 14th of February, I guess, on page 19th, and it states that a high energy neutrino was detected under Mediterranean Sea near the coast of Italy, that is in Sicily. Now, it was made using an advanced observatory which is currently under construction. So, let us try to understand first of all, what are these neutrinos? These are a type of subatomic particle, and the characteristic of these subatomic particle, that is neutrinos, is that they do not have any electrical charge. Further, they have a very small mass, and the spin of this neutrino is actually left spin. The left-handed spin, it is a physical term of the spin of the neutrino which is opposite to the direction of its motion. Understood? So, you do not have to understand or remember anything, just remember that the direction of its spin is actually the opposite of its direction of motion. That is why it is called as left spin. Whereas this does not have any electrical charge. However, it has a mass, therefore it has a very small amount of mass. Now, these are second most abundant particle after photons. What are photons? These are light particles, and the neutrinos, these are second most abundant particle, and these are most abundant particle among the particles that makes a matter. Understood? Now, neutrinos, these are produced both naturally and artificially. In natural cases, these are produced in very high energy processes that happen in our universe, like the stars, supernova. Whenever they explode, it leads to manufacturing, or it leads to production of neutrinos. Whereas on Earth, it may be produced artificially also through particle accelerators and even through the nuclear power plants. Understood? So, they can produce both naturally as well as artificially. Understood? Now, in terms of detection, they are very hard to detect, and this is because of two characteristics. First of all, they seldomly react with any matter because their electric charge is negligible, and also they have a very small mass. So, as they are very hard to detect, that is why you need a very high technological development or particle accelerator so as to detect these kind of neutrinos. Understood? Now, why is actually discovery of such neutrinos important for the scientific community? First of all, it helps scientific community scientists understand the extreme cosmic events like when stars explode, or how the black hole activity functions and the formation of supernova. This can be understood by tracking and detecting the neutrinos that actually emerge out of these universal phenomena. Also, it creates a new window into the universe, as unlike light, these neutrinos, they do not interact with matter, and hence they are not disturbed since the time they have emerged. So, by understanding their evolution and tracking them, we can understand or gain more information about how the universal process has evolved over the years. And it also understands the early universe, especially the phenomena of Big Bang. It led to production of large number of neutrinos, and hence when we can understand and detect these neutrinos, it will help us get a bigger and clearer picture of how the Big Bang and the overall expansion of universe has happened. Understood? So, this is how discovery becomes important, and the characteristic of the neutrino is that they have a very small mass and no electric charge, and their spin is actually opposite to the direction of their motion. That is why they are called as left spin. Now, these are produced both naturally and artificially. Please remember these kind of information. Now, is the Sicily Observatory the lone university or observatory in the earth to detect neutrinos? The answer is obviously no, as there are many other observatory also. The largest one is known as Ice Cube, which is located in South Pole, and it is buried 2500 meters below the sea level, and that is why it has a surface array called as ice top and an inner subdetector called as deep core. Both of this has, or it is called as Ice Cube. The second observatory is known as Super Kaimakonde, which is located in Japan, and this observatory, it uses 5,000 or 50,000 tons of pure water surrounded by 11,200 light detectors. The another one is located in Italy called as Gran Sasso National Laboratory, which is located on the borders of Italy and France. And another one is known as Underground Neutrino Observatory, which is located in Mont Blanc in France. And the last one is Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment, which is located in South Dakota of United States of America. So these are the neutrino observatory across the world, which helps humans understand neutrinos better. It helps us understand the process of how the universe was formed after Big Bang and how it has evolved since. Understood? Now let us solve this practice question with reference to neutrinos. Consider the following statements. Neutrinos, these are electrically neutral subatomic particles that interact weakly with matter, making them difficult to detect. Yes, it is correct, as these are very hard to detect because they have no electric charge and very small mass. Also, neutrinos, these are produced only in artificial nuclear reactors and do not occur naturally. What did I tell you? These occur both naturally and are produced artificially. Naturally from emergence of universe like process of Big Bang, etc., and also from explosion of stars, supernova, etc. So second statement becomes incorrect. Which of the following statement given above is or are correct? Option A here is the right answer. Therefore, A is correct. Now, as I tell you every day, there is a chance that even if I simplify each and every concept for you, you might not be understanding some of the important concepts that are explained in the session. And the main cause behind it is that you do not have a foundational level knowledge of the UPSC syllabus. But do not worry. StudyIQ has a solution for you, and it is called as the foundation batch, which is available on our website. So if you click on the explore courses, the first two options are the Sampoorn batch, that is foundational batches for the year 2026 and 27. So suppose if you want to enroll yourself for the 2026 batch, so click on this tile. The course right now is available at 37,499. Understood? But you can get it for another discount after using the code which is flashing on the bottom half of your screen right now. It is called as ATS Live. So click on buy now here. There is an option for you to add promo code. Click on add promo code. Here you can enter the coupon code. Click here, add ATS Live, and click on apply. So see, now the course fees has reduced from 37,499 to 29,999. So click on buy now and save your hard-earned money or your parents' hard-earned money for other important work, right? So this is how you can enroll for the course. It is available at a very reasonable rate. Understood? Now, moving on to the next article. This article appeared on Saturday's newspaper on the front page, and it highlights that the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, it resulted into signing of newer pacts between India and US, one of which was India-US Compact Initiative, which was a cooperation initiative across many key pillars of cooperation. Now, the underlying strategic objective of signing this particular pact by India and US is to enable India to counter China's belligerence in the Indo-Pacific region, and also to increase the capacity of India's land, air and navy forces, and enable India to protect its borders much more efficiently and effectively. Now, this compact initiative is actually an abbreviation which stands for Catalyzing Opportunities for Military Partnership, Accelerated Commerce and Technology. So you can understand it is a strategic framework that does not just deals with military related purposes, but also with a domain of trade, technology and security. So let us understand key highlights of this compact initiative and how it tries to increase cooperation between India and US. Now, first of all, it is a military and defense partnership which strengthens India's defense capability by increasing the defense trade and technology transfer. As you understand, India not just is a major manufacturer of arms and ammunition, but it is also a very keen importer of arms and ammunition. And one of the largest sources of imports for India's defense related platforms is US, as it is providing us with helicopters, artillery guns, etc., etc. Now, not just providing them India with the hardware, it is also looking to make or involve these two countries jointly exercise their militaries and also increase the strategic interoperability between these militaries so they can function together in case any future need arises. Also, it is promoting co-development and co-production of defense equipment, particularly because of the fact India wants to manufacture these defense equipments in India, and for that it needs the active support of US private sector and its companies. So when Indian companies and private sector of US, they will co-develop a platform and hence they can manufacture it in India under the program of Make in India initiative. Also, India currently in terms of technology of its aircraft, it lags behind the most technologically advanced countries like Russia, US as well as China. And the most highlighted aspect of it is that India does not have a 5th generation fighter aircraft. So in that regard, US has formally now offered that it is willing to sell India its latest F-35 fighter aircraft, which is a 5th generation aircraft. So this is also covered under the Compact initiative. Now, another factor or another domain that deals with Compact initiative is the factor or domain of trade and economic growth. Now, you understand India and US's bilateral trade are in news because India has a surplus of trade with US, and this concerns US government in general because it does not want its trade to have a deficit with India. So for that, what US is saying that why don't India starts to import energy related items, particularly crude oil and natural gas from US, so that to balance its trade with India. Also, US has a particular concern in order to reduce the tariff barriers, and it is saying to India that please reduce tariff barriers on imports of automobile from US, imports of other items from US, and for that it wants India to negotiate a mini trade deal which will allow both Indian and US markets to reduce the levels of tariff in these two economies. Also important for our today's discussion is the domain of technology and innovation collaboration. I told you, right, strengthening technology sharing agreements is very important between these two countries, particularly in the sectors of semiconductors, artificial intelligence and quantum computing. As US is a technologically advanced sector, it has many companies who is very technologically developed when it comes to manufacturing of semiconductors like Snapdragon, like Intel, like AMD, etc. So it wants to share these technologies with India so that India can become self-reliant or Atmanirbhar in these domains also. Now, India is also undertaking quite a lot of development in space technology, particularly it wants to send humans into space, and for that cooperation with US is essential, as US has an experience and history of sending people into space and also to moon as well as other planets. Also, cyber security and digital infrastructure. India has quite a lot of good digital infrastructure, particularly the digital payment infrastructure, and US wants it to replicate in its domestic market also, especially after Google has highlighted the use of UPI in India and how it can be replicated in US. Also, cooperation in advanced civil nuclear technologies, particularly development of small modular reactors, is in news, as India wants to deploy and increase the use of nuclear energy so as to reduce its dependence on more fossil fuels or greenhouse gas emitting energy sources. And for that, India is looking to develop small modular reactors which will increase the use of nuclear energy and also reduce the cost of deploying nuclear energy. And for that, many US companies have the technology. However, there are certain roadblocks in the way, so that the US companies, they cannot manufacture any equipments in foreign countries. So India wants US to amend these provisions, whereas US on the other hand, it wants India to reduce the amount of liability or civil nuclear liability that India can impose on any equipment manufacturer in case of nuclear accidents. Also, there was this launch of Indus Innovation or India US Innovation, which is a technology which will promote joint research and technological development in emerging fields like renewable energy, artificial intelligence, supercomputing, etc. Understood the main focuses of collaboration. And the last but not the least is the cooperation between these two countries in the domain of security and counter-terrorism, because you understand both of these countries, they face the brunt of terrorism emerging from other countries. Particularly India has faced terrorism from Pakistan, whereas US has also faced terrorism from Pakistan and Afghanistan, and both of these countries, they are quite sensitive to the problems of terrorism and how it changes the overall societal outlook in these countries. And for that, these countries will enhance their intelligence sharing and also conduct joint operations so as to control the emergence of terrorism from another countries. And also these will increase their maritime security cooperation, particularly in Indo-Pacific. And why is it important in Indo-Pacific? To counter the rise of China and its increased deployment of maritime assets in the Indian Ocean region. And for that, US wants to increase its cooperation with India, which is a dominant player in the Indian Ocean region. Understood? Now, let us move to another article. This article appeared in the Indian Express Explain section. Co-developed manufacture is in sync with FDI of US in Bharat, sir. Yes, actually. First of all, if US gives its technology to India, and even the US companies, they can set up factories in India and manufacture it in India. So how it will help? That it will increase the overall domestic manufacturing in India, and it will also allow foreign companies to develop these technologies with Indian company, and hence it has benefits for both these countries. Dipanshi, hello sir, I am attending live for the first time, but I see the video from few days. Great. Thank you Dipanshi for attending it live. I am understanding that you are liking it much better in the live session. Bharat, hello sir, please do cover news related to UPSC from Indian Express. I am covering it from Indian Express. Now this article, it appeared in the explain section of the Indian Express, and it states the India's new middle class is emerging. What this article talks about, let us try to find it. Now the context of this article, it explains that India's sector-wise employment, particularly private and public sector, it is changing right from the time India got independent in 1947 till now, that is in 2025. Now it also identifies, while understanding the evolution in India's sectoral component of employment, it also identifies one key challenge. So what are this evolution and challenge? Let us try to understand this in our today's discussion. Now it tells you that after independence, the India's employment opportunity, it was particularly or primarily created in India's public sector, that is government related services, and also the PSUs, that were governmentally owned corporations. Now, primarily the employment in public sector back then, it stood at 194.7 lakh. This was in 1995, whereas private sector, it created employment of about 80.6 lakh. So you can understand, more than 2 times the amount of jobs it was created by public sector when you compare it with private sector back in 1995. However, coming back to 2012, you understand this sectoral composition, if not changed, has become quite tilted in favor of private sector, because in 2012, the amount of jobs that were created by public sector, it reduced to 176 lakh, whereas private sector, it increased from 80 lakhs to about 120 lakhs. Understood the change? That from 1995 to 2012, amount of jobs that were created in public sector, it reduced, whereas the amount of jobs that were created in private sector, it increased. Understood the change? Now the trend of organized employment, which shifted from public sector to private sector, it increased after the economic reforms of 1991, especially after India got liberalized, privatized and globalized. Now this change in sectoral composition, it further gathered its pace after 2011 and 12. As you can see, number of regular employees with Indian Railways in 1990 to 91, it was about 16.5 lakh. However, it reduced to about 12 lakhs in the year 2022 and 23. Now back then, Indian Railway was the largest company or largest employer of people in India. Now this was the sharper reduction with employment in central PSUs, as central PSUs back in 1990-91, it employed 22.2 lakh people. However, it fell to just 8.51 lakh, that is about 1/3 number in about 2023 and 24. So this is how the amount of employment opportunities that were created by public sector, particularly in government owned company and its government owned corporations, they reduced significantly. And this gathered space after 2011 and 12. So understood the change. Now, how was jobs created after India got liberalized and privatized? In this, two sector played a very important role. First one is the IT sector or information technology sector. Now, the number of jobs that were created in India's IT sector from 1990s to 2010s, it increased by 10 times, and that is why you can say India's IT sector became the symbol of creating jobs for India's second middle class or middle class 2.0, as it is highlighted in today's article. Now, India's IT sector further increased after the pandemic struck, because during the time of pandemic, we saw there was this increasing trend towards digitization, as people needed more amount of digital services, and which companies provided them with digital services? It was this IT sector itself. And that is why we saw that the amount of jobs that were created by India's IT sector, it was around 11 lakh before pandemic struck, and it increased to about 16 lakh after pandemic, and now it is around 15.34 lakhs by the end of 2024. So you understand, India's IT sector has played a key role in providing jobs to India's new middle sector, and it increased further after the pandemic due to rise in the demand for digital services. And 5 big IT companies currently, it offer or it creates about 12.52 lakh regular jobs, which is higher than the Indian IT sector. It created 15.34 lakh jobs, which is higher than 12.5 lakh jobs created by Indian Railway, and 14.2 lakh jobs, which is created by Indian Armed Forces, Air Force, Army, as well as Navy. So India's IT sector is employing more people than compared to Indian Railway and Indian defense organizations. Understood? Now, the second sector, which is not so highlighted prominently in the news, is the transformation of India's banking sector. As in 1991 and 92, you saw the scheduled commercial banks in India, they created about 9.8 lakh employment, and 87% of these employment, they were created by the government owned public sector banks. So only 13% of employment back in 1992, they were created by private sector banks. But come to 2023 and 24, you will see the number of jobs that were created by private sector bank. It was 8.74 lakh, which was more than the PSU banks that created about 7.5 lakh jobs. And the total amount of jobs that were created in banks, it increased by 2 times since 1990. So this highlights the development of banking sector in India and how most of this development was done by private sector banks. Now you compare the numbers of private sector bank together, they provide about 6.1 lakh plus of employment, whereas India's largest private sector bank, that is HDFC, it employs about roughly the same amount of people as compared to the India's largest public sector bank, that is SBI. Whereas the second and third largest private sector banks like ICICI and Axis Bank, they have a higher number of jobs that was created as compared to India's second largest public sector bank, that is PNB. So you understand the role of private sector banks, particularly the top 5 banks, that is HDFC, ICICI, Axis, Kotak Mahindra, as well as Bandhan Bank. Understood? Now, this article also highlights that there is an employment challenge. Although it stated that liberalization and globalization, it opened up new industries and created new opportunities, particularly for private sector in these companies, particularly IT sector and banking sector, as I've told you. However, this employment generation is majorly created in the service sector, and this is a major source of problem. Why? Because as I told you, right, India wants to become a developed country, and for any country to become developed, it needs to bring surplus labor from agricultural sector into more economically productive sector like manufacturing sector, which has happened in countries like China, US, etc. However, this structural transformation did not happen in India. Rather than creating more jobs in manufacturing sector, India created more jobs in service sector, which is more expensive and less economically productive in India. So this is a source of concern as it is highlighted in today's article. And it also highlighted that as per the figures of periodic labor force survey, the amount of jobs that were created in agricultural sector, although it reduced from 64% in 1993 to about 42.5 in 2018. However, after that, the amount of jobs in agriculture, it grew to 46.2%, whereas manufacturing sector is concerned, it currently only employs about 11.4% of India's total workforce, which is less than construction sector, service sector like trade, hotel and restaurants, and other services also. So this is how India's structural transformation has not happened as against earlier developed and developing countries, and this is a cause of worry in as per the today's article. Also, it highlights that though service sector has increased, but the most well-paying jobs in service sector, it is cornered by people who are highly educated or better educated. Whereas on the other hand, most of the service sector jobs even today, they are informal and low paying, as labor, sanitation workers, security staff, gig workers. They highlight the most amount of jobs in the service sector. Most important is that India's gig workers, especially employed by Uber, Zomato, Swiggy, they are high number, and that is why these kind of jobs are low paying. They do not have any access to social security benefits, and that is why they are quite vulnerable in general. Whereas the high paying jobs in service sector, that is IT, banking, etc., they are cornered by people who are highly educated and not these gig workers. Understood the difference? Now let us move to the last article of the day. This article appeared on page 9 of the Indian Express newspaper, and this article highlights that total amount of pending cases in the country, it is more than 4.5 crore. This is across all the courts in India. Now the backlog of pending cases, it is a big issue in Indian judiciary, and according to the available data, 75% of the total cases in High Court and 63% of cases in lower court, they have been pending for more than 1 year, which according to judiciary is a very is a source of worry. And in this context, reducing the judicial pendency has become an imperative for India's judicial sector. So why is this big issue? Let us try to understand this. First of all, let us try to understand the reasons for high pendency in India's courts. First reason is that there is a shortage in terms of judges that are available in Indian courts. For example, there are about 63% of vacancies that are there in India's subordinate courts, and even if when the judges are available, till about 16 judges are available per million Indian population, whereas approximately you need 50 judges per million population for India's judiciary to work perfectly. So this is how there is a shortage of judges, that the pendency or vacancies in the subordinate courts are not filled, and the total amount of judges are less than what is required. Also, there is lack of infrastructure. For example, total amount of judges in India, only about 75% of judges, they have a separate court for themselves, whereas 25% of judges, they do not have a separate court for themselves. So that is why construction of infrastructure, which is very necessary for functioning of courts, that is every judge, they need a separate court for themselves, that is not there. Also, there is a several complexity in the cases which leads to delay in their hearing, and also very keen aspects of judiciary such as lawyers, they seek significant delays in grounds such as procedural grounds, that first of all they have not gotten through their cases perfectly, so they need more time to that, and that is why the hearing of cases, it gets delayed significantly. Also, as recently there is an increased amount of legal awareness among people, that is why you see amount of PILs that has been filed in India's courts, an amount of special leave petition that are filed in Supreme Courts, they have increased, and approximately more than 60% of newer pending cases, these are cases that were admitted into Supreme Court by the special leave petition. So these are the reasons why is there currently a high pendency in India's court. First of all, is there is a shortage of judges, the amount of infrastructure is not sufficient for the courts to function smoothly. Also, because of complexity of cases, we see that there are delays in hearing of the cases. Judges and lawyers, they need more time to study, which leads to procedural delays. And also, because of increased legal awareness, the amount of cases that are being filed have increased. And this has created a problem that has been beautifully highlighted in one of the Indian Bollywood movies, is that Tariq Pe Tariq, that courts, they give newer dates, and that is why it leads to delays in judiciary and the overall ending of the cases. Now, What is the impact of high pendency? First of all, it leads to delay in administration of justice, and as there is a delay in administration of justice, people who have been wrongly accused of a crime, they still remains behind the bar, and that creates a lot of problem. Also, as there are a lot of pending cases with the judges, they require less amount of time, or they have less amount of time to give their judgments for a particular case. So even when they give the judgments, the quality of that judgment might not that well. Also, because of delays in administration and bad quality of judgments given by the judges, the faith in courts have lessened in recent times. And because of this, the people's trust in overall functioning of India's judiciary system has reduced, and that is why you've seen people are afraid in going to courts. Also, as the cases take long time to finish, there is an increased financial burden on litigants, particularly on poor people, as we have seen many people are locked behind the bars just because of the fact they cannot afford their bails, and this creates a lot of problem in India's judicial structure. And also overall negative impact on economy, as many commercial cases that have been pending in the courts, it leads to delays into the completion of projects, it leads to higher amount of spending on the projects by companies, and it overall negatively impacts the functioning of economy. So not just from the aspect of polity or justice, it also is detrimental to India's economy in general. So the question now remains, what measures can be taken in order to improve the process and reduce the amount of judicial pendency? First of all, as I told you, there's a need for creation of newer infrastructure. For that, you need to digitize court, you need to create newer courtrooms so that the judges have adequate space and time so that they can give their judgments. Also, there's a quick need to address the issue of vacancies, and for that you can hire ad hoc judges, as we have heard in recent cases, and also you can enlist the services of retired judges for that matter. And also by issue of vacancies, there is also a demand that you need to create All India Judicial Services, which is an All India service like IAS, IPS, etc. Also, you can seek the help of retired judges and law professionals by using the concept of evening court, that the courts can also hear cases later in the evening by enlisting the help of retired judges and also the law students. Also, there was this report or 238 report of the Law Commission that first of all highlighted three measures. First is that you need to fully utilize the working hours of the courts so that the judges, they hear cases for longer period of time, and that is why they'll have larger time to give their judgments on a case. And also you need to reduce the amount of vacations, particularly in higher judiciary of the country, if you want to reduce their amount of pending cases. Also, you can club or combine similar cases so that these similar cases can be heard at once and their reduction in pendency can be achieved. And also the judges, they are requested to give clear and decisive judgments so that it creates less opportunity for people to hire for their hearing of cases to the higher courts, as if the judgments are clear and precise, it will create lesser amount of potential for that judgment to be referred to higher court. Also, you need to promote alternative dispute redressal systems like Lok Adalats, Gram Panchayats, and also through commercial courts, so that the matters that eventually reaches courts right now can be solved before they reach courts. So these are the measures that can be taken in order to improve the efficiency of judiciary and also to reduce the pending cases. So these are the discussion that we have done today. Now the practice question, let us try to quickly understand how to solve this question. Naturally, you will divide this question into three parts. You'll start your answer with highlighting the total amount of cases that are pending in the courts right now, and this data has been showed for National Judicial Data Grid, which is a website by the Indian judiciary. So these are amount of the cases that are pending in the courts in India, and this kind of data is very good if you want to start your answers with. Now coming to the body part of your answer, here you will divide your answer in two parts. First of all, you need to critically analyze causes of judicial backlog. So first of all, you will highlight cause. You can borrow the points from this particular slide. These are the 5 causes that I have enlisted, and for the measures that can be taken, you can use these points, particularly 238 report of Law Commission, and also the need to address vacancies by enlisting the help of ad hoc judges and also creation of All India Judicial Services. So second part of your body, you can write suggestions, and conclusion, you will conclude your answers by saying that quick resolution of cases is very essential if you want to ensure that judgment or justice is delivered to people in India, and also to ensure that the people have faith in Indian judiciary, because India is a democratic country which functions not according to whims and fancies of an individual, but according to the law of land, and you need the law of land to be implemented in its true letter and spirit, so as to ensure the functioning of the democracy in its true spirit. Understood? So this is how you will conclude your answer. If you want to get answers evaluated, you have another option right now. Please submit your answers on the Telegram group ATS Live, and I request the other students, if suppose student 1 submits his or her own answer, other students can tell the student what is lacking in their answers and how their answers are good, and similar help can be used by other peers also. So please students, I have less amount of time right now. Please help your fellow students in order to get their answers better, and also use these kind of initiatives right now. Is there a shortage of judges? Why government are not fulfilling the seats, not increasing the vacancies? See, Sejal, right now, Bharat Kalor, I have covered all the news that are relevant from UPSC in this discussion. Sejal, if there is a shortage in judge, why are government not fulfilling? See, hiring of judges, it is not the responsibility of government, rather the judiciary themselves. And if they do not have the budget, do not have the time, how will they hire new judges? Justice delayed is justice denied indeed, right, Baga Spinks? Use these kind of answers in your conclusion. Good morning, namaskar, Doraemon gamers. So these are the suggestions. Please use the Telegram channel ATS Live to submit your answers, and other students, please help your fellow students and fellow aspirants to evaluate their answers, and also do not forget to give the suggestions. But before this finishing today's session, this is the practice question for the day. Please answer the correct answer into the comment section after this video ends, and please do not forget to hit the thumbs up button if you like this video, as hitting thumbs up button and commenting on the videos helps our video reach more and more aspirants like you. Understood? So this was all from my side for today. I will see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Until then, please have